Another fantastic game and a fitting end to what has been a absolutely brilliant series between these two. Just a pity that there isn't, a decider to come next week. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. If these two teams played each other every week, I don't think I'd ever get bored of it. It's just fantastic to watch, and drama all the way through, nip and tuck, and then an amazing end. But let's start at the start, as it were. So it's an all-action start to this. It was all action all the way through, honestly. So Willie Roux has to go off for an HIA, which failed, and then Feinberg and Gomazuli comes on for him and has a fantastic game for the Springboks. Both fullbacks, Osborne as well, two of the most outstanding players, I think, on the field in this one. Then Mostert gets his nose split open. Eventually he has to come off as well. Orji Stayman is on twice, once for Etzebeth for I think, was that blood or an H? I can't remember, but he was on for him, and then he comes on for Mostert when he has to go off fully. Then Etzebeth, he's looking for early interceptions, nearly gets a couple of them. Furlong then needs treatment on his hamstring, and it's all within the first few minutes, all this is happening. Ireland looking a lot brighter than they did last week. Attack looking that bit better, finding a bit more space against the box, but that box defence is still formidable. And Ireland, they managed to force an early penalty. Crowley puts them in front from the tee, 3-0. Ireland definitely more accurate in attack. South Africa on top of the scrum again, but not as much as they were in the first test. You can see that Ireland got a little bit of parity in it, but if somebody's going to win a scrum penalty, it's going to be South Africa. Ireland's line out better, but still not firing completely on all cylinders, but they are competing really well against the box to the line out, and James Ryan especially getting up there and nicking a few. Both teams being very physical, as you'd imagine, as well, and they just brought the intensity, brought the physicality, but then no little skill to go along with it as well. Ireland, they show their skill. They cut South Africa open. Crowley puts Osborne through a gap. He then gives it to Henshaw, and he's in behind, and then he's able to draw the cover and put Murray over next to the post. It's converted for 10-0. Ireland then get pinged at the scrum, and Pollard opens South Africa's account for 10-3. South Africa then start applying pressure of their own. Quagga Smith charges down a Crowley kick, but Osborne somehow comes up with a try-saving tackle to stop him going over for a score that would have, wrestled that momentum back for South Africa. The Boks then, they keep coming though. They work within 5 meters of that Irish line, hammering away at it. We have a knock-on from, knock-ons from de Klerk and Colby, and then some staunch defence from Ireland managing to hold them out. But South Africa then go to corner from a penalty. They claim the line out, but in the maul then they kind of lose control of the ball. It's a scrum to Ireland. Ireland get pinged at that 5 metre defensive scrum. Pollard then cuts the deficit to 10-6. Not long after then, Peter stepped to tie offside from an up and under, and Crowley gets the kick to the post for Ireland, and he lands that kick for 13-6. Pollard then kicks the restart dead. Low this week, deciding to actually leave it. So good choice from him. Scrum back from Ireland, and then Ireland work it up, close to the South Africa line, and then Pollard slips as they take the ball over their own line. So it's a 5 metre scrum to Ireland. Doris then goes off the back of the scrum and thought the box defence really well. He went kind of into the tram lines, into the outside channel, and initially it looked like momentum was with him, but I think there was 3 Boks there managed to halt him, and then Ireland had to recycle. They got close to the line, but eventually then they tried to go with a bit of width, and I think it was Ringrose knocked the ball on, but we come back for a penalty because I think Pollard was either offside, or I'm pretty sure he was offside. So penalty to Ireland, and it's a big compliment, I think, to that South African defence. There's no hesitation from Ireland. They point to the post. There's no going to the corner, and Crowley does slot that simple kick, and it's 16 points to 6 at half time, and already a fantastic 40 minutes of rugby. Into the second half then, Sasha Feinberg and Gomazuli sparks the box early in the half. Nice weaving counter attack from him. He then finds Aronsa, who goes deep into the 22 to go wide. Colby's out there, but he's marshalled well. South Africa then come back inside to go to the big units. Khaleesi, Snyman, Oxenche all carrying really well and tying in defenders. I thought Oxenche had a fantastic game. He hit tons of tackles. He carried really well, obviously scrummed really well. And then there was a point later on in the game as well where he basically was juggling with the ball. Like, he almost drops it on attack, but manages to juggle with it. At one point he has it like on his leg with one hand just holding it there, but manages to do that and then present the ball back as well. So he was just amazing. Then Faf de Klerk, I don't know why, but he tries some silly kick after that. And it wasn't like, it wasn't a crossfield kick. It wasn't a kick in behind. It wasn't a kick over to space or anything like that. It was basically like the Irish line is here, and he tries to kind of kick it between two players that are very close to each other. So obviously Ireland end up with the ball, and then they're able to clear from there. So it was very, very silly for him. I felt at times both teams' decision making wasn't great. Ireland, towards the end of the game, I felt there were points where it felt like decision making was going to lose them the game the way they did it. But this is just an example from the box side of things as well, that it wasn't all a clear thinking on their side either. Then Ryan steals under the line out, and it's at this point you're thinking he's justifying his promotion from the bench. That kind of changes a little bit later, but we're still in the Irish half, and South Africa, they win a penalty. Pollard slots that one for 16 points to 9, and South Africa just start reeling Ireland in at this stage. Beelum, he's on for Furlong, who goes for an HLA. I don't think Furlong came back after that. And same as well, Grant Williams comes on for de Klerk, who doesn't come back on either. Doris then goes to the bin for a crock roll on Malcolm Marks, and the only real discussion between the officials was whether he was going to go or James Ryan was going to go, because Doris started the crock roll, and he kind of, like, his weight went onto Marks's leg, and then James Ryan continued with crock rolls. So one of them was going to go to the bin, and then that goes to the bunker for review. I'm not going to argue with the decision. I thought it was right. You can't, honestly, you can't argue with that. If you're an Irish fan and you're arguing with that, then I don't know. Well, you're full of shit. Sorry, but those are the kind of things we don't want to see in the game, and it definitely deserved a yellow card. It was just a case of which one of them was going to go. Pollard then pops the penalty over for 16 points to 12. Box then keeping in hand, and they force a penalty. James Ryan offside, and with his involvement in the crock roll and this offside penalty, maybe that opinion of he was worth the start is kind of changing a little bit. Pollard makes it a 1 point game, 16 points to 15, and it really feels like Ireland need a score because all the momentum is with the box, and Ireland just need to break that run of scores and start offering something themselves, because it was all Ireland the first half, it's all South Africa in the second half. We then hear that Doris's card will remain yellow, and again, I think that was fair given the level that was in it, etc. But definitely was a yellow card. From here, then Snyman, lovely offload, and it gives South Africa some front foot ball. They forced another penalty in the shadow of the post. Porter with his hands on the ground before he went for the ball. Pollard puts South Africa ahead for the first time in the game, 18 points to 16. Quagga Smith then gets pinged at a ruck. Crowley lands it, and Ireland back in front, 19 points to 8. And these are all happened within a couple of minutes of each other, swinging back and forth, back and forth. Ireland then offside from Feinberg and Gomazuli kick. It was one of those ones where it was a nice kick up, but it wasn't handled well. So Ireland knock it on, and just instinct, the player ahead of him catches the ball, and obviously that's a penalty for offside. So Pollard then immediately restores South Africa's lead for 21 points to 19. South Africa then win a penalty at a scrum, and Pollard with a chance to extend that lead, and he makes it, and it's 24 points to 19. Then two poor South Africa kicks, first from Pollard and then from Ngoma Zulu. So Pollard, he tries to kick up the line and doesn't get his angles quite right, and I think it was Frawley. It was either Frawley or Osborne. I can't remember now. Like my mind's a bit frazzled after watching such an exciting game. But they jump from off field to catch the ball and bring it infield. So they keep it in, and then they kick cross field, and then it was Feinberg and Ngoma who catches the ball there, runs out a little bit, and then tries to go for a banana kick and gets it completely wrong, kicks it out on the full, and that allows Ireland then to have decent position in the South Africa half with a line out. And Ireland from here then, let me find where I am. Okay. So Quagga Smith, then he actually steals the line out, but then there's a breakdown and Ireland steal the ball and win a penalty at that breakdown. So they decide they're going to go up the line, and they go up the line right into the corner. Herring then, he makes a mess of the line out because he could have been pinged for a dummy throw, but he was saved because Steenkamp had already come in early as the receiver. So if Steenkamp hadn't done that, it absolutely must have been a dummy throw from Herring. But yeah, his blushes are kind of saved there because now Ireland decide to tap and go close to the line. South Africa though managed to hold Healy up over the line and to drop out to South Africa. Frawley then lands a drop goal from the dropout. So that theme of Ireland scoring from South African dropouts continues, and he makes it 24 points to 22. Ireland back within a couple of points. Ireland then with a chance to attack, but they go for a cutout ball out to James Lowe, and it's not necessary to have just put it hands down the line. And it's completely too long and goes straight into touch. And you can see Lowe is really frustrated with that. And it feels like now Ireland, they need to get the ball back and back in the South African half as well. They don't really want it in their own half where they could concede a penalty. Frawley then tries a cross kick in his own half and, kicks it out in the full, and it really does feel like Ireland, they needed patience, and that's where kind of the decision making, we saw a few earlier from Crowley as well, really felt like it was going to cost Ireland in the game. South Africa then, they have a chance now to manage the clock and just to run it down, but they knock it on and they give possession back to Ireland. A nice kick then from Frawley off the back of the scrum, and he tempts Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu to carry the ball over the line. It was one of those ones where he could have just left it, but we saw with James Lowe last week a couple of times, there's always that thing of, I don't want to leave, I don't want to take the chance. So he catches the ball and runs it into touch and gives Ireland the line out. Ireland then off that line out, they go back to Frawley, and he lands another longish range drop goal to make it 25-24. But before that, we have a TMO check for possible obstruction from Colby, but we see that he's just slipped over as he's coming up to try and challenge for it. So it's kind of delayed, but then there's wild celebrations on the Ireland side, and Frawley has won the game with the final kick. So, and I think it was a fitting end to the series. Two teams just, so close to each other, going hammer and tongs at each other. And, Ireland, they lost the first test and looked like they were going to lose the second test as well. And just with that final moment of magic, they managed to pinch it. But as I said at the start, I so wish there was a third test for this one, because this feels like, it's unfinished. It's like one of those ones where you watch a Netflix series and the end of the series is like, well, what happens next? That kind of thing, whereas it leaves you on a massive cliffhanger and you have to wait like a year or whatever for the next one to come. And God knows how many years we're going to have to wait for, not just the next game between these two. We want to see another test match between them. And it means like obviously an Irish tour down to South Africa, because South Africa aren't going to come up to the north and play Ireland 2 or 3 times. They're going to play Ireland and Wales, Scotland, France, England, whoever. They're going to play like 3 out of those 5 probably. So it means we've got to wait now to see, and it may mean that these 2 teams, as in the current state at least, like a lot of these players won't end up kind of finishing off that business in terms of a proper series. But this was a proper series, and it's something I think that we have to keep in the game of rugby, is the idea of having series, because we've seen at times where you can have teams who they'll go and they'll play Team A as a warm-up, and then they go and play 2 tests against their main opposition, and sometimes we've even seen it with teams going to Australia for a test and then going over to New Zealand for 2, rather than going for a 3-test series. So 3-test series are kind of on the way out. Unfortunately, they're not quite yet. Obviously, it's going to be another maybe decade or 2 before they're really out of the game. But we really need to cherish these series, while we have them, because we don't know when that time is going to come where they're just things that don't happen anymore, because all touring parties, or not parties, tours themselves have been shrinking. We don't have midweek games anymore, and the number of tests, obviously end of a long year with the World Cup, nobody's going to be playing a 3-test series, but still we want to see, I definitely want to see more 3-test series. So and then next year, then we have the Lions as well, which means that the 6 nations, or what are called the home nations teams that make up the Lions, won't be touring at any of the big teams down under either. So then that's another year that we've got to wait to really see another big clash, and then it's probably going to be Ireland going to probably Australia, right? Because they've done New Zealand 2022. This year was South Africa, and it must be Australia then. So you're talking about some point after the next World Cup again to see another one of these. So it is a special thing, and we don't see them all that often. But these 2 teams, I've got huge respect for South African rugby, and for the Springboks as well, for their players, the coaches, and their antics and wherever. Like, it's all part of the game. Some people don't agree with it. I don't necessarily agree with all their antics, but I wouldn't begrudge them it, if you know what I mean. I think it's part of the game, and we need variety in the game. And if somebody is clever enough to come up with something to give you an advantage, then you have to say kudos to them, not, oh, we need to change the rules to stop them doing that. I don't think that's the right way of doing things. And there was, who was it? Some New Zealander, like one of the former players from yesteryear, come out. I know I'm going on a tangent, but it came to my head. Was talking about how the currently the rules don't play into New Zealand's strength, and they're the great innovators and etc. And therefore World Rugby should be looking at changing the rules. And I was thinking, well, that doesn't tie together, because if you're the great innovators, then you should be able to cope with the way the rules are now, right, and find a way of doing it. Like we see the way the Springboks are, rules change, they're almost always like the first test team to find a way of getting an advantage out of the new rules that have come in. Like, that's innovation to me. And I think like South Africa are definitely one of the most innovative teams in the world, and they keep reinventing themselves. Like, people say, oh, they play the same way. They don't play the same way all the time. Like, they have certain DNA in them, the same as every other team. That's always going to be a core part of their game. But you look at the South African team, that won the World Cup in 2007, or the 2019 version, or the 2023 version, and they all play differently to each other. But they, and because rules have changed in between those, but they're playing in the way that suits best for that rule set as well. But anyway, went on a big tangent. I hope people don't mind about that. I just love talking about rugby, and it was just stuff that came into my head. Now, let's just briefly talk about each of the teams. So we start with South Africa. Fantastic over the the 2-test series. Coming together as a team. A lot of these guys aren't playing the rugby in South Africa as well. So you get a mix of guys coming in from the Premiership or top 14 or Japan, and then all the URC guys going in there as well. So they've got to get things going. They did have to warm up with Wales, and that would have helped with that, but they hit the ground running in that first test, and they were definitely the deserved winners. Second test, it was so close between them. I think it's probably my Irish bias. I can't help it, but I feel like, just on the base of it, that Ireland just about shaded it. And I think they were deserved winners. People may disagree, but that's what happens, I think, in close games. And when you look back at a close game as well, for either team, you can pick like 100 things that if this had happened this way or that had happened, like maybe it would have made a difference. But I'm a firm believer in the fact that if you change something in, let's say, people are talking about something that happened, let's say in the 20th minute, whatever it is, something happens in the 20th minute, and people are saying, well, if that had happened, then this would have happened, and we would have had this many more points. And if you look at the amount of points at the end, we would have won. But I'm a firm believer that if you change something at the 20th minute, then you completely change the whole rest of the game. You can't just assume that everything else happened exactly the same way. I'll give you an example, and I use it often, is that let's say somebody misses a kick at goal, right? And then people say, oh, well, if he had got that kick. So the only one I would say it would count for is if Frawley had missed a kick at the end there, obviously it changed the whole thing. That's the only time I think the result of a kick where the clock is in the red, where it actually does, you can say that if he got that or didn't get that, it would have changed the result. Because for me, come back to what I was going to say, is that let's say if a missed kick, you wind back time and the guy retakes the kick, right? And he slots the kick. Well, now the game is restarting from the halfway line with a restart rather than from a dropout. So now any of the positions that happened after that point couldn't have happened, because we're starting a completely different, from a completely different restarting point. So you have to kind of scrap the rest of it, and then it plays out differently. And maybe, the team that won actually end up winning by more rather than losing. But, that's the thing, I think, in these tight games, that there are lots of tiny little places where you can point to. And that's how close the Boks were, to a 2-0 series win. People were asking, about before this series, whether this was still the top two teams in the world. I think coming into it, anyone who had any questions about the Boks being the best team in the world, they definitely been answered. I don't think there should have been any questions. Like double world champions, or back-to-back, like obviously 4 times world champion, but back-to-back world champions, #1 in the world. Anybody, questioning whether they were the best team in the world is just kind of some kind of stupid sour grapes, right? But they proved it in this test series, I think, in that win, and also in this one as well. They were so good in this one too. And yeah, when I talk about so good, I'm not saying there was no errors. There was errors from both sides, but it's more about when you look at the totality of the effort that the teams are putting in, the intensity they're bringing, and the accuracy that they're bringing at certain times as well, how their set piece is going, how individual players are performing, etc. They are the best team in the world. The bigger debate, I think, would have been about whether Ireland are still near that level. Like, are they worthy of still being second place in the world? And I think this win here shows that they probably are. I'd still think the All Blacks have gotten closer to them, and if Ireland, the All Blacks had a series in New Zealand, at the moment, it might end up being like a drawn series or 2-1 to the All Blacks. That's how close I think it is between these. I think that the home advantage would lead to probably an All Blacks series win. But I think Ireland have answered some of their critics as well. Even though this team have had like a fantastic run, they've only lost like a few games over the last few years. They retained the Six Nations title. They were very close in that first test, and then they did something that they haven't done in a very long time for me, and that is when the box got out to 24-19, I was thinking, well, can Ireland actually come back from this? Because generally, Ireland aren't able to go again after that. When they have their fast start, they build a lead, and then the idea then is to just keep eking ahead through to about 60-70 minutes and then see the game home. But in this one, they had to come up with that play right into death, and they were able to do it. They don't do it all that often, and that's why things like Sexton's drop goal against France, etc., are such big memories for people. Is because seldom is wonderful, as they say, and that's what it is for Ireland as well. It's seldom, but it is certainly wonderful. But for Ireland, still feels like coming out of the series, hugely tested in the series. Their depth was tested as well, so it's brilliant to see the likes of Caelan Blade, Bealham getting more time, even Cian Healy actually putting in a decent shift off the bench, Kelleher getting a start, Herring coming on, Gary Ringrose coming back, Osborne, one of Ireland's players of the series there as well, so it was, I think, hugely important for both sets, of players, both nations, in terms of getting things going in the build up now, the 4-year cycle, as it were, for the next World Cup. I think at this point, then you've got to say that both of these teams are in really good positions, and you can see as well that below the players who were there at the last World Cup, there's still some decent depth. Obviously, South Africa have more depth just by virtue of the sheer number of players they have, but Ireland's depth isn't that bad either. But Ireland do have work on. Set piece certainly needs to be better, and that's something that coming out of this now, that's got to be something that they target in terms of we want to get better. We want to be more competitive in the scrum next time. We do play South Africa. We want to be winning the odd penalty at the scrum and getting parity, etc. Whether they can or not is another thing, but I think that should be one of their big goals coming out of this. But pretty much talked as much. I could go on. Honestly, I could go on for another hour talking about this game, about this series, about these two nations. But I'm going to cut it there because I don't want to go too much into stuff and people just click away from the video. So what I want to end on is I want to give a shout out to the South African fans, okay? Because throughout this series and through URC as well through the year, it's been absolutely fantastic, interacting with you guys. And for me, I know like there are some arseholes out there, but you look at the Irish fan base, there's arseholes in the Irish fan base, there's assholes in every fan base. But for the most part, huge, vast majority of you guys have been very respectful, very, very knowledgeable in the comments, and kind of very generous as well, I think, with some of the comments he's made, either towards me or towards Ireland or any teams that are covered as well, through the season as well. And it's great to see that. It's great to see that kind of mutual respect between fans. And it again, it's one of the things that I love so much about this game of rugby, is that it doesn't matter, whether which team you're cheering for during the game. It feels like with a lot of you guys, you'd be very happy if we just went to the bar after the game and had a few points and shot the shit about rugby for a few hours, and that's really great to see. And so that's kind of the point where I wanted to end this series on, was just giving a shout out generally to South African fans, and to you guys who've been commenting so nicely on my videos as well. So from here on Monday, I will do a review of, you know, the weekend's games, including a shorter review of this, obviously, and the other games that happened over the weekend as well. And then after that, then we're kind of into our off season. There are videos that I've been promising for ages that I'm going to now, well, I'm going on holidays. So I'm going to go on holidays, enjoy some time with my wife, have a nice break. And then once I've done that, then I'm going to get my head down and I'm going to get the stuff that I've been promising out to you guys, because it's something that, you know, I think you guys will enjoy. It's going to be something very different to what I've done before, and hopefully it comes off. But it's there, and I keep promising it, but it is eventually going to come. I just need to get the time to do it, because having like a full-time job and trying to do something like this is difficult. And I'm not complaining about it, don't get me wrong. I absolutely love making these videos, but it does take a long time to do it, and I can't dedicate as much time. You know, if I could, this would be my full-time job, but you know, bills got to be paid, so I have to have an actual job that pays money. But yeah, I'm waffling. Again, just massive thank you to you guys, and I'll see you on the next video on Monday.